What does it take to be successful in life? I would have to say it starts with having an unshakable mindset. Now, to get that, it's going to require us to win the psychological battle of overcoming self doubt, fear, and anxiety. And it can touch that pill to swallow. It can be really tough, I should say, to pill for us to swallow, like for many of us, and when we have to face these realities. But what if you're the kind of man who's interested in finding out just what your limits are? Then what do you do? Today, my guest takes us through a roller coaster ride of his life as he blazes a path for all of us to follow. Now, before we want to get into that, I just want you to know that being a man today has never been more challenging. And so the pain that we feel is real. It's a pain of loneliness and unworthiness, and it's masked by our anger and our resentment. And it's all because we're uncertain or afraid to take that next step. So if you're tired and fed up of where your life is at, then I'm going to encourage you to start your hero's quest, where you can become more, accomplish more, and live more than ever before. Go to members.awakenman.net and start your quest today. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awaken Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. What was the turning point in your life? And how has that turning point shaped you into the man you are today? Has this turning point made you stronger or has it made you weaker? All of us kind of have crossroads in our lives that shape us into the men we are. Sometimes we like what it has done to us, while other times, maybe not so much. And it's that mental battle that we constantly deal with. And if you have the tools to master the psychological warfare that's going on in there, there's absolutely nothing that will ever stop you. So today, my guest is going to share how he's transformed his life from being common man to being totally and completely uncommon. So allow me to introduce my guest. Josh Parish was born in South Alabama, and he grew up spending most of his time on the baseball diamond in the summer months, harvesting and selling watermelons. His immediate family moved from state to state about every year. And so as his stepdad rose in the ranks of the major clothing retailer. So a moving family, right? And always being the new kid in school, overweight and dripping out with the latest Tommy Hilfiger gear, Josh caught flack from many of his peers. And while most would see this as a setback, he saw it as an opportunity to refine himself over and over again. Now, overly observant of underlying power dynamics and hyper-conscious of the mortality and obsessed with psychological warfare, little Josh was far different than your average child. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about that today. And so for many years, Josh was imprisoned by his own mind, suffering crippling anxiety due to his perceived by his father's cold and manipulative ways. So today, he sells millions of dollars worth of real estate annually. And not only that, he's the founder of the GetUp Gang, and we're going to touch on that today. And forever grateful because for those lessons, Josh wouldn't be nearly the animal that he claims himself to be today. Welcome to the show, brother. How are things?
Man, I'm doing well. That was a heck of an intro, man. I hope I can keep up with that, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, man, you're already there, buddy. We're just scratching the surface of your story. I'm just really looking forward to this conversation. I love the work that you're doing and how it all came about. And so, as you know, when we get here at the Revolutionary Man podcast, the opening question is always going to be about a hero's quest. That time in your life, you knew things had to change. What did you do about that, and how did that experience shape you into the man you are today?
Man, I've had a lot of turning points throughout my life. I've pivoted so many times, and I would probably say initially the first moment that I knew that I wanted to be different was, man, it was seventh grade, and at that point I had already developed my curveball, but because I was overweight, I was new in this school, and I went out to tryouts, and they didn't give me a second look because, I was a fat kid, and you just don't command much respect on the athletic playing field whenever you're an overweight kid. And I knew from that point that they didn't give me my fair shake because, of how I looked. And I started working out like a madman at that point. Yeah, so I mean that was the first time that I was really that epiphany hit me. So
Yeah, those are always tough times, right? I think back when you're just going through your history and reading about that, and my family didn't move as much as it sounds like your family did. I do remember, going into, transitioning from grade 8 to 9, I think it was, and going into a bigger school, a new school, and you were the new kid in town, and so for me, I literally that next grade year, that great ninth grade, I had to fight my way to respectability. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I won all my fights, although I won a lot of them by at least a block and a half. And I think it's important that those experiences do shape us. And so, tell us a little bit more about this. The traveling and having to start and reinvent yourself all over again, and how that played a part into what you're doing.
Something you just said there really stood out to me, and yeah, you're right. It is a fight to gain respect, whether that's when you're by yourself and you do the work when nobody else is looking, or you're actually in front of folks and you have to do something that commands respect. And there's a lot of things that we can do before we ever meet an individual to command that respect. And that's, refinement of, our studies and our mind, and then how we present our bodies as well. Sorry, I had to say that, but okay. So say that question one more time. I apologize, but I had to get that out.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. If it struck a chord, I'm grateful for it. Now, I was just thinking about all the times you had to reinvent yourself. Every time your family moved, you had to go through the same things over and over again. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, how you tell us a little bit about how that you started to refine yourself in your process to really have that. And you talk about it being this psychological warfare. And so I thought we touch a little bit on that right now.
Well, moving from school to school, in elementary, middle school, high school, I knew that I was going to be hit with a certain perspective. And, if you see enough of a situation, it no longer becomes chaotic, which if a kid just moves once in their school career, then they're like, oh, it was traumatic. But if you do it a dozen times, then you kind of know what to expect. So just going from, maybe on the first day, I won't wear something super, outspoken, like an orange sweatshirt or something, or maybe I won't have this hairstyle going forward, or maybe I will go knock that one kid in the mouth that's the baddest person in the room just to go gain that. So it was always like, okay, so how can I shift the perspective of the room? And I wasn't necessarily a troubled kid growing up, but yeah, I mean, it was my mind always drifted to leverage points and the powers of the room, and that's helped me over the course of my life. But yeah, I mean, if you stick your finger in a light socket, you kind of learn your lesson pretty quickly. And I've, there's been times in my life where I definitely have had my losses, but I honestly think that you'll never have a loss if you can take a lesson from it. And it's our perception of what's going on, what has happened, and how you're going to operate moving forward. So I don't necessarily have a great example of how I necessarily transformed throughout school, but I definitely know that I did it plenty of times, and like it was a cumulative effect, and I definitely have taken it with me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could get the sense that as you develop more and more skills, and really what it sounds to me is like you really started to be able to develop the skill of understanding people and the situations, and being able to look at that, and then from there also sounds like you've been able to really refine how the stories started to change about who you were as a boy, and as a young adult, now as a man. And so today, let's fast forward today. What's alive and real for you today? Like what does a great day look like today for Josh?
Great day is wake up and, I journal a little bit, and then do my exercise and my gratitude. And then I'm providing value to the world, whether that's through online post, or I'm making cold calls and providing, information to people that didn't know, about their houses. But, have been selling real estate for like the last 4 years now in Florida, and have had decent success. But am I super passionate about it, even though I'm pretty good at it? It's like, oh, well, nobody's building a statue for me, for selling houses. So just a couple of months ago, I decided to really drop the hammer and throw everything at my coaching and public speaking. So, because I know I've got a message that needs to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I totally can relate to that. I've been a career chef in my life, and then moved to working in, we call it the front of house. And while there was a time in my life where I was really passionate about it, it's at that stage where, this is much more impactful. Meeting guys like you and talking about the things that we need to do to be better as men, as people. And so I can totally relate with what you're saying and wanting to lean into this part. So let's talk about what you mean by this replenishing the well.
Yeah, man, it's the ultimate way to maintain a relationship, because relationships are reciprocal. And when someone cares about you, they're going to pour into you. But if you never pour into them, in return, then that other person is going to feel stripped. They're like, I'm just over giving to this person that doesn't care about my experience. And me personally, now I know I'm not a fan of these modern terms like, I don't know, gaslighting and stuff like that. I don't know what that means, but the friend recommended this book to me by Breen Brown, or anyways, it was about what's the term? Anyways, I overgive. Like whenever I find someone that I'm really enjoying and I think that they provide a lot of value, like I tend to overgive, right? And well, that's not necessarily a recipe for success, because not everybody's going to return the favor of overgiving.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You should give without expectation of receiving. And at the end of the day, though, you're going to have to replenish the well no matter what. Know that you're going to stand firm in your values and providing value, and to always be topping off the tank instead of, just take, because some people smell takers from a mile away.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they're going to quickly realize, hey, this person's a taker, and you can never return from that stigma or that, that title of entitled.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I just made a note here, talked about that overgiving. And I find as men that we tend to do that. And the way that the term that we like to use around here is that we become people pleasers, right? It's always about giving. And then, at times it makes me wonder, well, who replenishes the giver? And some of that is our work to do. And some of that has also in the relationships that we choose to surround ourselves with. And it sounds like you've been being able to start to figure that out. And you've been, shifting that, the model around to help yourself and help other folks that you work with really understand that key piece. And so tell me, is that what you would call the bit of the start of building your master key for what the work that you do?
Well, I would say, it is a foundational pillar. Absolutely. I'd say that the master key to, just throughout life, well, there's a couple of master keys. One master key is getting a mentor, someone that knows that, exactly what you want to do. And, by getting a mentor, you can accelerate your path by 10, 20 years just by hanging out with them for just a little while. And then, a way to get a mentor is one, figuring out what they need before they ever have to ask it, right? But whenever I talk about the master key to build rapport with someone, especially someone that may be in a higher position than you, is asking for their professional opinion. Mm-hmm. Because everyone loves to give their opinion on things. And if you can cloak it as a professional opinion, well, you just wrote them a ticket to just like tell you the juice. And, if they're feeling human that day, then yeah, they'll give you an answer. And then if you can ask penetrating questions that are solid, not just like superficial Google questions, oh, they're going to love you for that. Because a lot of people are scared to ask the master, the mentor, the path, and to ask them good questions. You'd think that people ask them questions all day, but really and truly, they're asking Google questions like before they even get started stuff. So, and that's when you sicken the master, and you don't ever want to do that, because then they'll just write you off.
Yeah, what a great perspective. I like how you frame that. That not asking Google questions, and really wanting to ask those those deeper questions about them. And I also appreciate, and you're absolutely right, even for myself, and how often that even today, being afraid to go ask somebody that I would consider, a mentor, a potential mentor, and understanding that they're human like us and they want to share. Everybody loves to tell their story. Everybody wants to share their knowledge. And if we're there to be able to your first point about how can we provide value to them, I think that's such a great way for us to really grow and expand ourselves, really put that extra juice into our lives, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And, the thing that, because it took the master, if they didn't get a mentor, it took them a lot of their life to develop what they have.
Yeah.
And if they're going to bless you with that portal to accelerate your journey to, take you to the mountaintops within the first few steps, they want to know that you've adequately prepared to handle that information. Because I don't know where it's at in the Bible, but don't cast pearls among swine, right? Because so many times in life, I'm talking to a person and I'm like, oh yeah, I've encountered this before. Here's do this. And they're just like, sounds great. And like, they never do anything with it, even though like they could just have done that and just eliminated everything and moved forward. Masters and mentors do not want to see you just forget about, or just not even be worthy of what they just told you. So
yeah,
I was trying to make that kosher, but
all good, brother. It's all good. But you mentioned another really important word there. I think what we challenge ourselves with is that worthiness is for ourselves, and we have to recognize that we're completely worthy of many things. And I'm saying that more for myself than for the audience. And so it's a great point that you're putting together there. So you developed this program called the GetUp Gang. Tell us a little bit about that, how that came to be and what its purpose and how it's serving people today.
So even though I've been a salesperson my entire life, for the last, I'd say almost 20 years, I've been helping people with their health and fitness practice. And it's mainly the mindset, but when I started that journey, I realized that most people didn't have hardcore fitness goals like myself. The majority, if are not really interested in fitness at all. And then the way that the information is presented online, even though there's an abundance of it, it's so confusing and there's such a mass amount of it and it's overcomplicated. It overwhelms anybody that just doesn't know how to do it. And then, most people just kind of do their version of it. But what the GetUp Gang is it's a free online community that presents the highest return on investment action items that you can do for your fitness and your health. And it's still under development, but it is live. But yeah, man, I've taken years and years of training and because people, even though we're all unique, issues run like a template, right? There's different templates for different people. You see like these doppelgangers where this person on this side of the world looks like this person. Yeah. That's people's problems too, right? Like we are all unique and there's different, combinations of things, but ultimately it's patterns and templates. So, and what I've taken is just like taking really complicated or seemingly complicated information and just boiled it down to the most simple action items that if you don't have a dime to your name and you're, just totally disempowered state, injured, that you can implement this stuff and just start from where you are and start gaining momentum with these incremental wins, because it's not about hopping on a track it's not about hopping on a brand new track. It's about going from where you are, taking that first step and seeing how you can win in the moment and doing it again and doing it again and doing it again. Because I could hop off and say, hey, Alan, here's how you become this. And, tell you to eat chicken and rice, 5 times a day and run 10 miles and squat every other day. It's like, yeah, well, who hasn't heard that? Like, let's give me some action items that I can take and internalize and then like put it into practice. Right. So yeah, that's what I did with the GetUp Gang.
Cool. That's really, really cool. And what I really appreciate about what you're doing with that is that you're, like you said, you're meeting people with where they're at, right? And just winning in the moment. And I think a lot of times that's what we struggle with, right? We have this, and that's where in doing the men's work that I do and helping guys, craft their goals and mission statements, and that is that there's going to be this disconnect a bit for where they want to be and where they are today. But it's to bring them back, like you're doing with people. Said, well, today you might not look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and if that's your goal, that's great. But what can you do to win in the moment today? And maybe it's not having that one Pepsi, right? Maybe it is doing 1 or 2 squats, but you're taking them to where they're at. And I think that's so refreshing, as opposed to just a cookie cutter routine where they get an opportunity to actually learn and work with a guy like you. I think that is really phenomenal. Well done.
Thanks, man. Yeah, reverse engineering is a heck of a tool. Like, just to envision like what it is you want, and then just start working backwards. But then, then your destination is where you are today, and then just weeding out what you will do and what you won't do. And then over time, like, eventually you'll figure out like, hey, is that meant for me? Or can you start that reverse engineered journey and kind of land close to it? Because, I hate to say it, even though I'm extremely seasoned in so many areas, like I very rarely hit any goals. And the reason being is because, like, I'll start down a path 100 miles an hour and internalize the wisdom of the path, at least up to that point. And then my goal shifts into like, well, I've just refined what I really want, because at the end of this path, this isn't what I want. This is what I thought I wanted. But I mean, because I'm a ship, right? I don't know. I mean, I know where I'm going, but I mean, I couldn't tell you, like, because I know it sounds crazy, but as you gain experience, you will reformulate. And if you don't, well, then are you really conscious? I mean, you're living your life day to day, and reality shifts in minuscule ways every single second. So
yeah, that makes complete sense to me, and the reason why it makes sense to me is that I was just thinking back to in my life when making, plans and goals, and yeah, I didn't hit a lot of those goals either, but boy, the transformation that went through and how things started to shift and change, that's really what the ultimate goal is. It's about growing and expanding who we are. Sure, ultimately, if you're really, hardcore and then you want to attain a certain thing, that's outstanding. But what was really, resonating with me is hearing you say that, is that it's okay, and for our audience and the guys that listen, is that it's okay that if your goal shifts a little and changes. I've heard it said that an airplane, even though it may be flying from, I'm in Winnipeg here, so we'll go down to Southern Alabama where you're at, and ultimately the destination is to get to Alabama, but it's off course 90% of the time, because it's always course correcting. Always, every moment of during the flight, it's course correcting. And if we looked at our lives like that, we wouldn't have to put so much pressure on that we may feel that we're not achieving our goals. And so what do you think about that, as then putting that together? Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense, because we don't live in a bubble. There's always going to be variables to, on every path. And yes, I mean, we need to be persistent in the pursuit of what we want and our goals, but also show appreciation for the gains that we're making on that path. Because it's not just like, I'm starting this today, and then in 12 weeks, I've done all this work, and then I receive it on the 12th week. For the most part, it may be like that in some things, but for the most part, it's a building of the journey, right? So yeah, I completely agree with you there. A lot of people don't understand what it takes to be number one, and the difference between number 1 and number 5 is it's a way different picture. Like, it really is, and it's like also going from 15% body fat to 10% to 5%. Like, it just, the amount of work that it takes, it's far more. Like, it's far more extreme going from 15 to 10, and then from going from 10 to 5. It's the work looks different. It's far more intense. And yeah, so you have to really, like, if you want to be number one something, you have to completely drop the hammer and don't mind if everything else around you burns down. That's
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Nothing great in this world has happened with unless somebody is totally dedicated to it. And so there's two sides of this, of our conversation, right? There's that focus if that's the type of individual you are, and then you're looking to get to that point, then there's a certain way to do that and a certain way to get there, and then you just follow that path. And then there's that other side of that coin that maybe we haven't yet committed, or we're not really sure. Not committed is not the right word, but we haven't really defined our goal enough just yet. That it's okay to course correct until we get to that point and we go, now I know what it is that I want. And then it's burn the ships type of work. And I think that's really what you're saying, is just to really get at it. Now, would you say that would be the healthiest and the fastest way for people to transform their fitness lives? Or do you have some other secret sauce you wouldn't mind sharing?
Well, you have to go all in on wanting that change. And the rubber hits the road in the implementation and the testing, right? It's not in the planning, because you could plan into oblivion, and all of a sudden you've spent 5 years or however long making this master plan, and the ship has already sailed. Like, it's a whole new situation. So, I mean, yes, I know I said that I've never hit, I very rarely hit goals, and that kind of made me sound like a bum, but I would decide on something and start taking steps immediately. Like, I would have a good plan, but you have to, like, the path is lit as you walk it.
Yes.
So you can't just sit back and think of the path that you've never traveled and try to plan for things that you don't know what's going to occur. Like, you have to walk the path. You have to embrace that unknown. You're going to be scared and you're going to be self-conscious. But at the end of the day, like, you just have to keep those promises that you make to yourself and know that you have your own back. And that's where, that's where the magic happens. And that's being the general. That's, you're actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think for sure, it's obvious you've been achieving your goals over the years because of the work that you're doing now, and in coaching and working with people on the health and fitness side of their business, and in the intro, $10 to $15 million worth of real estate annually is nothing to slouch at either. And so it all goes to show for me, and what I'm hoping our listeners are picking up from this, is that, there's lots of different nuances to achieving things in life. And we have to be willing to course correct. We have to be willing to commit. We have to be willing to do the things to get us to that next step. And, and the big takeaway I've got, the real mic drop moment for me when you talked about, planning is just not, planning is important, but you can plan for 5 years and not do anything. It's action. We need to take action to do things. And that's really what, the work that you're doing is really saying to people, is that, what's that next action step? What's that next step that you can take?
Well, you can also run 100 miles an hour in the complete wrong direction. So, and I've done that before too. So it's starting the path, but then as you start to get experience, you start to see what works more than others. So that's where the highest return on investment action items comes in. Yes. And then you make sure that you do those highest ROI activities first before anything else. And then, because when you work towards one thing, you work away from another, but you can also maintain other aspects of your life through just the implementation of those high ROI activities. So, you got to figure that out. But yeah, if your goal is to build a business, then all of a sudden, like, you're just making business cards for the next 3 weeks. It's like, are you generating business, or are you just, yeah, it's part of doing, getting a business, like doing business, but like, or should you be building a business card for 3 weeks, or should you like be making calls and like shaking hands? Like, I don't know, but
I think we all know the answer to that question, right? Forget the business card.
Yeah. So you got to get to work, but then like work on the things that matter.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. We get caught in that mundane side of life and just doing the things that, think are important, and they're really not that important. So, of everything, when I think about your life and the places that you've traveled and things that you're doing, I'm just wondering, what was a powerful question that was asked of you, and how did that question change you in some way, shape, or form?
That's a really good question. It stumped me a little bit. So a powerful question that was asked of me, just a few months ago, I asked myself the question. It's like, Josh, are you doing real estate to live a comfortable life, or are you actually going to pursue what you're meant for? You know, and then like that really, and man, when I make the decision to do something, like it looks absurd to the people around me, because I mean, real estate's treated me extremely well. And, you know, I mean, people know me as a solid real estate agent. Like they know I know my stuff, but just to up and just to cut it off cold turkey and just be like, nope, this is what I know, what I'm supposed to be doing. And you have to listen to yourself. I mean, you need to seek wise counsel, but at the same time, like, you know what you're envisioning. And at the end of the day, nobody cares about your goals as much as you, and nobody cares about your legacy as much as you. So, I mean, either way, you're going to be forgotten in 100 years, but we're here now, and your work is either filling you up or it's tapping your energy stores. And honestly, I didn't want to be calling people every day like, hey, you know, you want to sell your house, even though I loved it, but it's just like, oh, you know, like I'm not leaving the mark that I want to leave. So,
wow, what a great question, and to ask it of ourselves, right? Like, you know, just think of it here for our listeners. If you were to ask yourself that question, am I doing to the thing that I'm doing today to just sustain my life, or am I doing the thing that I'm truly called to do? What a powerful, powerful question. And one that, number one, takes guts to ask, and number two, takes even greater fortitude to be able to commit to making that shift. And so thank you so much for giving us that question, because it is a powerful question for us to ask ourselves. And you've done that, and you've started to make your shift. I don't know about you, Josh, but I wasn't really a reader as a young guy, but as I got older and went through my first major life event there in my early 30s, I started reading books. And so today I find myself, you know, consistently reading. So I'm just wondering, is there a book that has really impacted you in your life? And if it is, great, and tell us a little bit about that, or maybe also what it is that you're currently reading today.
absolutely, man. I got a few books that I really enjoy. Well, the first one, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That book puts everything into perspective. Like, anytime that you think you're having hard times, go read some of that, and then you're just like, like, I am not having a bad day. Yeah, when he was talking about, he could see when it was people's time to die just by the look in their eyes. That gives me goosebumps now. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the most powerful books that I've ever read. And then my favorite author, which there's some controversy around his line of books, it's Robert Greene, but The 48 Laws of Power. And I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday about it, because she's got a boss that, you know, my girlfriend's extremely talented in the realm of sales, and the boss hired her to be the heavy hitter salesperson in their field. And now there's those feelings of like, oh, you just outshined the master. Right. So the boss is feeling like now girlfriend's trying to overtake her job, you know? So I was like, oh, you violated rule 1. But yeah, that if you can look at it from just a very neutral eye, read that 48 Laws of Power book, because you'll start remembering times in your life when you violated the laws. And yeah, that book just blew me up. So
I love Robert Greene stuff, especially the 48 Laws of Power is a phenomenal book, man. Just love that. And Man's Search for Meaning. And, you know, I'm listening to you tell that story, and I was getting goosebumps too, you know, and speaking about just knowing when people are going to die. And then let's just think about it today. How many times have we seen in our lives the same look in people who are dead to their lives? Right, their careers not going anywhere. Maybe relationships are done, or they've totally lost, you know, the direction for their goals and their dreams. And so that's, to me, is just as painful, maybe even more painful of a death, because you relive that like Groundhog Day every day. And, you know, so those are two outstanding books I think everybody needs to read.
I agree, absolutely.
Tell me, you must have had along the way, you've had some mentors and people that have helped you get to where you are today. What was the best piece of advice that you've been given, and how has that served you?
I've had a lot of different mentors over my life. You know, one, it wasn't necessarily a piece of advice that I was given, but my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Caldwell, he was in Mensa. He was the first person that ever made me feel really smart. And I guess just because I recently wrote him a handwritten letter the other day. I hadn't contacted him since 6th grade, but But like all these stories have popped out about how if you like teachers positioning their students as geniuses and they're not really geniuses, but then all of a sudden their work just is greatly enhanced just because they believe that now, like the kids believe that they're geniuses.
Yeah.
So you can actually do that to the people that surround you. Like you're just with the verbiage that you speak to them, like it shifts their perspective, their perspective of self. And then all of a sudden, like they love you because they are feeling like a genius because of you. Like you didn't necessarily, but you're just pumping them up. And yeah, I mean, but so if you can figure out ways to like be genuine and pump people up around you, oh yeah, you're going to be, I mean, you do that, like you're going to have some major sway on people. Like that's awesome. Like,
No kidding. Absolutely. Love that. I love that, and have, even back in, when you're in sixth grade, to have teachers do that, I think is pretty cool. Listen, Josh, of everything that we spoke about today, maybe there's something we didn't get a chance to touch on. What would be the one takeaway you would want our listeners to have?
I would say that spend some time analyzing the stories that you tell yourself about yourself and your life, because your reality is shaped by the stories that you tell yourself, and especially the stories that the people that surround you are telling you about you. So bring your merciless scalpel to those stories, and just the transitional words. If you're, speaking from a place of like you're a victim, or like, so just go and analyze those stories, and you'll change for the good. You'll change for the better for sure.
Man, love that. Absolutely. We have so many stories we tell ourselves, and when they become unconscious stories, it makes the work a little bit more challenging. But to your point, using that scalpel to help, carve those things up and make, and tell a more empowering story so we can truly live the lives that we're meant to. So thank you so much, Josh, for spending time with us today, and you've been able to help shed some light and help us really battle in that psychological warfare that we all have. And so if man or anyone's interested in getting a hold of you and participating in your work, what would be the best way for them to do that?
My link tree is thejoshparish.com. It's got my email, all my social media handles, phone number, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the best place to find me.
Perfect. I'm going to make sure that's in the show notes so folks can get a hold of you, and do reach out to Josh. Sounds like his programs are, really changing lives, and it'd be great to see and hear from folks that have had some great success with you. So thank you once again, buddy, for being on the show. I really appreciate it today.
Hey man, I enjoyed it. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.